Okay, my friends, let's check for understanding. What was number 1? What was number 2? What was number 3? I love me some Atlanta people already. You guys are listening. This is good. Number 4, we learned the important role that collective inquiry plays in the PLC. Some fascinating research done. I always forget the gentleman's name, but trust me, it was done. They followed teachers after they were out of their master's program, right? And looked into how much professional reading they do after school is done. Very little, my friends. Right? My wife is one of them. I love her to death, but she found it more interesting to read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or what have you than a book on how to increase student achievement. She's at the middle school, right? Now, obviously she does, but I thought to myself, you know what, this is interesting. That after we're done with our schooling, rarely do we seek out books that help us in our profession, right? So we had an issue at our school with English language learners. Remember I told you that story? The kids who are not speaking proficiently in English yet. And we decided to do a collective inquiry, my friends. We decided to look into how can we ensure the academic success of English language learners. Now, how many of you have ELLs in your schools? Right? I need you to do a search on Google called Beat the Odds. Are you familiar with this? Beat the Odds. Go to Google or Google Scholar and type in Beat the Odds. And it is a study that's coming from the state of Arizona, or Nevada, excuse me, Nevada. And it talks about what a school noticed are the characteristics needed in order to address English learners. It is free and it is excellent. But so are these, my friends. Check this out. Connecting with students. English learners in American classrooms. If I'm walking through Barnes & Noble and I have English learners that are not learning in my classroom, is that a book that I pick up? You better believe it. How about this one? Teaching English language learners. How about this one? The Art of Science of Teaching. Robert Marzano, who writes a book every week, right? Right? How about this one? 50 strategies for teaching English language learners. My God, they're even giving you the number that you're going to get. 50 of them, right? Not 48, not 22, 50, right? Teaching English language learners, K-12, Expectations, a great book, and it's very thin. A Year in the Life of an ESL Student. We started actually reading this stuff. And my friends, when you are in those collaborative sessions like we demonstrated here, how powerful would it be if we are all math teachers and we have a high number of African American students in our classroom and we look at books that talk about how to make sure African American kids in a poor community learn Algebra 1. And we all read the book, and after 2 weeks of reading the book, we get together, you spring for the 50 nuggets for 10 bucks, right? And we're all eating nuggets, right? Except me, because I have a goal, right? And we start talking about what this book is telling us. Do you think something powerful can come out of that? Absolutely. My friends, why doesn't this happen enough? In LA, it doesn't happen enough. When was the last time you got an invite from a group of teachers that said, hey, so we picked up this great new book by Robert Marzano, who's an expert in our field. What do you say we get together, read it, and get together in 2 weeks? Why isn't that happening? The answers, my friends, are out there. You know what? They're out there. We just got to make sure that there is a movement that allows that to happen. So we started reading some of this stuff. We started looking at some of this stuff, right? School-wide, and then departments started looking at things. You know what's another great way of doing research? Visiting schools that are like yours, but are having success. Isn't that a phenomenon? I mean, if you knew that 10 miles down the road, there's a school just like yours whose Algebra 1 scores are much better than yours, doesn't that give you like initiative to say, we need to go figure out what they're eating down there? Because we need to bring some of that over here, right? This is the kind of movement that all of us need to make sure we initiate at our schools. And it's not always going to be the principal. Lord knows it hasn't always been me. I'm just the principal. Our teachers, our staff. Mind you, I said staff, because some of our secretaries have made some awesome contributions to what needs to happen at our middle school. Our kids and our parents have been the driving force amongst a lot of the things that I'm going to share in just a moment. That is what being a professional learning community is about. It's not a program. This is not something you can buy. It's a philosophy. It's a mindset. It's the belief that on my watch, these kids will not fail. And we're going to do everything possible to make sure they don't, even when it gets hard. Even if that means, true story, visiting their homes when they don't show up to a meeting you've asked them to be at. Why? Because we are in the business of what? Saving lives. That's the business we signed up for. Right? So, my brother is part of the LAPD, but he's a good guy. Okay? And I find it fascinating that in the Los Angeles Police Department, they have these elite groups. This is called the SWAT team. Do you know what SWAT stands for?
Special Weapons and Tactics.
Special Weapons and Tactics. That's right. You used to watch SWAT when you were a kid too. I love that show. I remember watching that show. You remember back in the 80s? I think this was like late 70s when I was a kid. And it was SWAT, and they had all these guys. Dun, 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 and I was just watching TV glued. And then they had that one guy who busted somersault through a window, came up and was ready to roll. And I said to myself, that's what I want to be. And so I got into public education. That's what I wanted to do. Right? I got into public education. I said, I'm going to be a SWAT member. Right? Well, in the police organization, they have these special group of people that are so dedicated. They want to make sure that in a crisis situation, they are the ones that are called to perform duty, right? Well, at our school, we really needed to get some of the right people on the bus and some of the wrong people off the bus. Now, if you haven't read this book, Good to Great, I'm going to recommend it again, because this is one of the recommendations he makes. You know what? I'm going to be straight up, because I don't have any political ties to anybody here. I can just be honest. There are people that do amazing work at our schools, and there are some people that need to go. They just need to leave. Bottom line, and it might be the sweetest person in the world, but if they're not contributing to making the school better, and they're not willing to engage in saving student lives, with all due respect, this might not be the place for you, right? And that's a hard conversation to have, right? So we started putting together at our school the English Learner Task Force, because when we confronted the brutal facts, the bottom line is our EL kids weren't learning. So you had a principal that was a former EL student, and bam, we brought in the teacher. Rosa Diaz Avery. Rosa Diaz had a passion like no other for EL kids, right? And it turns out that we needed an ELD teacher, an English language development teacher. None of the high school people really wanted to do it because they went to college to teach English. They wanted to teach ELD, right? So we put out an open call, and this one guy came in. He was amazing. He was from the elementary ranks. And in the middle of his interview, he got so passionate about working with EL kids. What did he start doing? He started crying. I started crying with him. I was like, yeah, I can see the passion, brother. Yes. And then when I looked at my high school colleagues on the panel, what were they doing? He won't survive a day at the high school. We don't cry at the high school. We don't do any crying at the high school. And I was like, but he's crying because he's passionate. He's crying because he went to UCLA. He was an EL kid, and he wants to be able to contribute. Doesn't matter, Cruz, won't make it. Won't make it past the day. Well, this is one of those circumstances where I, as the principal, said, yeah, we're going to go with this guy. And it worked out beautifully. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Gutierrez has been an awesome addition to our Baldwin Park High School family. For the next 5 years, our EL kids all of a sudden feel that they exist at the school. They're empowered, and some amazing things are happening in his classroom and throughout the school because of the guy that cried at his interview, right? Then we brought in Diana Rovida, the most amazing school community person. Her job is to work with parents, and if she has to call 68 parents one by one, she will. But they better be at that meeting that the principal called for. She's amazing. You see, then we got the counselors, we got the parents, and then we got the consultant that we hired with our Title I money to help us with this particular problem. And you know what we did? Is they started getting bad. They started having accomplishments, and they started recruiting. Now, we're not a committee. We are a task force, AKA a SWAT team at the school. Every school's got committees. We got a task force. These are people that are so passionate about what they feel, I don't have to worry about how am I going to pay them for their time. I find a way to pay them because they deserve to be paid. But these are your people that are going to say, can we get together on a Saturday at 7 to discuss what's going on? You know what I'm saying? They're so passionate, that doesn't matter to them. And so they were successful because, my friends, we started confronting the brutal facts about our EL kids, And this is what ended up being the result. When we started off in 2006, we weren't even in the game. This is the state gap between English-only kids and English learner kids when it comes to English language arts, right? We weren't even in the game. When our EL task force started doing their work, we got in the game. Look at this. We started closing the achievement gap. And this year, we went even up more. It's funny what happens when you get a group of committed people together and they figure out and say, you know what, screw this. On our watch, our kids are not going to fail. We're going to make sure we do something about it.